This video is all about you, and thou, and thy, and thee, and ye. By the end of it, you'll know how all of those were used, and even where you can still use them. I welcome thee. So let's start off with thou, which you might have come across in certain niche literature like the works of Shakespeare or the King James Bible. Well, you may be surprised to learn that thou is not just a fancy old-fashioned way of saying you. It's more interesting than that. So you know how lots of other languages have two or maybe more ways of saying you, but included is a formal version and an informal version? Well, English used to have that too. In early modern English, thou was used as the informal version. You would use it to people on the same social level as you, your friends, your family, and also for people who you kind of look down on. Whereas you was the formal version, which you would use towards people who you were at least supposed to show respect towards, or who you genuinely respected. It would be a bit like today saying, "Mate, thou spendest far too much time on YouTube." Or, "Your Majesty, you really shouldn't let the corgis do that on the carpet." Thou for informal, you for formal. Simple. Except when you have to bring in thee. So thou was used when the other person was the subject of the sentence, so the person that was doing the thing. When they were the object of the sentence, the person that the thing was being done to, you used thee instead. Shakespeare demonstrates this difference beautifully in one of his most famous sonnets, Sonnet 18.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate.
Object, subject. And while we've got that up, we should talk about why there's this art there. This is all a question of conjugation. So when we use a verb, we change it, depending on whether we're talking about you doing it, me doing it, I doing it, he doing it, she doing it. And that was also the case for thou. So let's get up a good old-fashioned conjugation table, the sort of thing that sends a shiver down the spine of anyone who's tried to learn a language. And we'll conjugate to be. So we say I am, he, she is, you are, and thou art. Now actually that's an unusual case because there's a formula for what you do when you have thou and you want to use it in the present tense. What you normally do is you add st or est to the end of the verb. For example, thou wouldst or thou walkest. That's far more common. There are a few other notable exceptions, including thou shalt. Thou shalt learn thy conjugation tables. Thy and thine were the possessive forms of thou. Now we just need to go back to you. So I told you that it was the formal version of you. Well, it was also the plural version of you. So you would never use thou when referring to multiple people at once. You would always use you. Oh, that sounds confusing. And just to add a little bit of extra confusion into the mix, the you was the object form. The subject form was ye. So for example, when a visibly irritated Jesus refers to his doubting disciples as, "O ye of little faith." Also, the difference between ye and you is apparent in this other quote from the King James Bible. Subject, object. And it's at this point that I want to talk to you about God, because he raises a confusing exception. You'll have noticed that in many versions of the Bible, God gets referred to as thou, which makes no sense, does it? I mean, thou is the informal, and you can hardly get more high and mighty than the Almighty. But there is a reason for it. Well, the story goes that William Tyndale, who did the first early modern English translation of the Bible, didn't like the fact that you could mean multiple people. He wanted to make it quite clear that there was only one God. So he went for the unambiguously singular thou instead. As I speak to you now, all of these different forms have disappeared to just leave behind you. And I, for one, am thankful for it. I mean, using the wrong version of tu or vous in French can lead to all kinds of faux pas, and at least we don't have to have that awkward conversation they have in German about whether or not it's time to switch to du. Viva la you. But as with almost everything in English, there are exceptions. There are places where thou and thee are still used. First up, there are English dialects where thou and thee are still used. For example, in parts of Yorkshire, they still use them both, although thou has become more of a tha sound than a thou. There's a Yorkshire saying, if thou ever does out for nowt, do it for this end. I hope no one from Yorkshire sees this. Meaning, if you ever do anything for nothing, do it for yourself. You can also find similar usages in other English dialects. The other place where you'll find thee and thou sometimes is with Quakers. That particular branch of Christianity has its own distinct way of speaking called Quaker plain speech, which still uses thee and thou. It's the reason for this slogan for Quaker oats.
Nothing is better for thee than me.
Now, the Quakers' use of thee and thou wasn't typical, even for the time when they first started speaking it, because they used thee and thou when referring to any single individual, regardless of rank. They were extremely egalitarian. Another thing that's different too in Shakespeare's day is that they don't use the conjugation with the st at the end of it. They actually conjugate verbs for thou the same as they conjugate them for he and she. Also, for modern Quakers, usage varies, but Quaker plain speech sets it out like that. And that's it. I thank thee for watching and will always read thy comments below the video. Now thou shalt like and subscribe, please, and follow me on Twitter and TikTok. Goodbye.